All right. Next game, Broncos at the Steelers. This line opened up Steelers -5.5, all the way up to 7.5. It's been moving up all day. Just been watching it. So I can't say I'm surprised by this line movement based on what happened. The Steelers looked great in the first game, and then the Broncos lost. It was a close game, but they looked rather lackluster. So who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I'm not loving this game's line. Like it just feels like one that's kind of corrected itself a little bit to me. But I think I'm on the Broncos here. I don't know if I'm going to bet this game, but the Broncos, as you said, like didn't look great on Monday night. They had some good spurts, and Drew Lock moved the ball well at times, but overall they looked like they could have lost that game by a lot more if Stephen Gostkowski doesn't cost the Titans 10 points by missing 3 field goals and an extra point. I mean, he ultimately came through and got us the cover, which was nice. But, it was not a good game for him. And, on the flip side, the Steelers, they looked more impressive in their win over the Giants. But one thing you have to take into account is the Daniel Jones pick at the goal line. That play really swung the game because it looked like the Giants were driving to tie or cut the game to a three-point margin. And then Jones just made an ill-advised throw under pressure. He just should have eaten that one. And, he didn't. It's a young quarterback mistake. It happens. So I think that will make a lot of people think the Steelers are even better than they are when in reality they're very strong. They're a very good team, but I'm just not sure they're a full 7.5 points better than the Broncos because the Broncos may get Cortland Sutton back. The Steelers have lost a couple of offensive linemen. We don't know what David DeCastro is doing. Zach Banner, I think, is out for the year. They're starting right tackle. He tore his ACL. James Conner might miss time, but that doesn't really have an impact because Benny Snell's better anyway. Then the only question for Denver is AJ Boye hurt and can he play? And if the answer is yes, then I think the Broncos would cover this for sure. If he's out, I'm less confident. But I'm still going to be on the Broncos. I just think this has risen a little bit too much for me, but I'm probably not going to bet this one because that Steelers defense is just so good.
It is really good against Drew Lock. It's tough, but Drew Lock had a tough matchup on Monday night. So the fact that he only made a couple of mistakes, that one play where he was almost intercepted, where he's throwing off his back foot and then he missed the receiver in the end zone. Like those are pretty bad, but I thought otherwise, he did pretty well. And Daniel Jones, he kind of did the same thing. Like he moved the ball well at times, and then he made that horrible error where he's trying to throw the ball away. Like he was trying to do the right thing. It was just that Bud Dupree was so good that he kind of batted the ball and then it fell into the arms of a Steeler player. That whole game was tilting because I don't know if you remember on the second drive when they recovered that fumble, they scored the touchdown on the fumble, and Joe Judge didn't challenge it because I guess he didn't know. The Giants, I feel like they could have covered that game. It was just so many bad things happen in that game. But I'm with you here. I like the Broncos. The injuries to the Steelers offensive line is just huge. Like one of the reasons why the Steelers are, in my opinion, are one of the better teams in the NFL, like outside of their defense, is their offensive line, which is usually great. But if DeCastro's out and now Zach Banner is definitely out, there's 2 guys missing in the offensive line. And I think Carson Wentz can tell you what it's like to miss multiple offensive linemen, especially if you're going against a dominant defensive front. Now, I know the Broncos don't have Von Miller anymore, but they still have Jarrell Casey and Bradley Chubb and some other talented guys. So I think this could be a low-scoring game, and Steelers are I guess both teams are playing on a short week, so they don't have as much time to prepare for each other. So I think off that big win, the Steelers are feeling confident. I think there could be a bit of a letdown here. So especially with the line value we're getting with the Broncos, the advanced spread was +6 and now it's +7.5. So we're going through 2 key numbers. So I definitely like the Broncos.
Yeah, and the other thing I could see is Vic Fangio admitted he screwed up late in that game, not using his timeouts. I don't know what he was thinking at that point. I guess his logic was that Gostkowski had missed so many kicks that if they had to settle for a field goal, so be it. But at the same time, he could have put the team in a situation where if they missed a field goal, all the Broncos would have to do is run out the clock. So I don't know what he was thinking, but the Broncos last year tended to play well in these scenarios where, they'd go up against a heavy favorite. I think Fangio knows a little bit how to motivate this team. even if his coaching decisions leave something to be desired sometimes. So I think he's going to look at last week and say, like, hey, guys, we should have won that game, and that's partially on me. But, like, let's go out and hit these guys in the mouth and slow them down. And I think one of their big things that they're going to be able to do is if they render the Steelers one-dimensional and get rid of that run game like they did for a good chunk of the game with Derrick Henry. Like, he didn't rip off anything big. I think they'll be able to do it with Benny Snell and or James Conner too. So if they can do that and make Big Ben have to make all the plays, that might be tough just because Ben's only in his second game back from a pretty tough elbow injury. So yeah, I just like the Broncos in this because we're getting so many key numbers. But this is going to be an interesting game to watch for sure.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the lack of timeout at the end. I don't know like what you were thinking in that moment, but as like we both had the Broncos plus or 3 or whatever, 3.5. I had 3.5. I don't know what you had, but the clock was running out, and I was thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, if this goes to 0, if this goes to like 2 seconds, they'll just kick the field goal, obviously. And then like the Titans weren't taking a timeout, and the Broncos weren't taking a timeout. And I'm like, okay, why aren't the Broncos taking a timeout? And it kept ticking down. And then there was this clock stopped, and like someone called timeout. I'm like, okay, maybe the Broncos finally realized it, and the announcer's like, Tennessee calls a timeout. I'm like, Tennessee calls a timeout. Like, what? It's just the most bizarre thing in the world. I have no idea what Fangio was thinking. Just I like him schematically, but these in-game timeout adjustment things, like it's not the first time he's messed up here. So.